Hello, saints and scholars. Welcome back to Theo Life with me, Patrick Stitt, where today we're looking at the external evidence for Jesus Christ. The external evidence for Jesus is actually particularly fascinating. Unlike biblical authors, who it could be argued have a certain bias towards Jesus being the Messiah, non-Christian sources of the life of Jesus have no such bias. This is called enemy attestation. If those who have a vested interest in the whole Jesus Christian thing being a big lie still teach that Jesus Christ existed, died upon a cross, and was thought to rise again, you have a very strong case that that thing would be correct. The people who didn't like Jesus wanted other people not to believe in Jesus. So if there was even an inkling of possibility that the major claims of Christianity were false and could be proven to be such, you can bet that a ton of these guys would have talked all about it. Therefore, the fact that the enemies of Christianity corroborate the details of Christianity within a short time period of Jesus' existence offers very compelling evidence that the life of Christ, as presented in the Gospels, matches the actual historical account. It should be noted that Jesus Christ was a poor Penegrinus from a tiny village in a very small country. He never held political office, never amassed a great fortune, and never held an army. He was not well connected, nor did he write any great books. He died an indignant death at the hands of a very low-level Roman administrator. The very fact that there's any evidence about this dude is quite surprising in the first place. So let's dig into these sources. First, we're going to look at the Roman historian Tacitus, who wrote his famous book, the Annals, sometime towards the end of the 1st and beginning of the 2nd century. Tacitus was a phenomenal historian. In his great book, the Annals, he spells out incredible, meticulous detail about Roman imperial history. Unlike Suetonius, who loved a good bit of gossip, Tacitus was very focused on the historical account of the Roman Empire. He was not that interested in being an entertaining writer. Yet, in writing about the Emperor Nero, Tacitus gives us a fascinating paragraph about early Christianity. During the reign of Emperor Nero, there was a massive fire that destroyed huge portions of Rome. And some people started to believe it was the psychopath Nero himself who had started this fire. And so Nero comes up with kind of an ingenious idea. To take attention away from himself, he's going to put it on these weird cult that started up in Rome called the Christians.
Consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus, and a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for a moment, broke out again.
I love the phrase, thus checked for a moment. Oh, that is so good! Dude, seriously, I want to get thus checked for a moment tattooed across my belly. Tacitus has this wonderful, very logical idea that because they killed Jesus, that should sort out this whole Christianity movement. Usually when you kill the leader, the movement dies. Oh, but Tacitus didn't know. Oh, what Tacitus didn't know. Tacitus had heard of thousands of cults throughout the Roman Empire, but this was the first time that when they killed the leader, he came back again. And I love the fundamental confusion with Tacitus that he can't figure out why killing the leader didn't kill the cults. I'll tell you what, baby!
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Now, from the account of Tacitus, we can confirm a couple of fascinating details. Tacitus confirms for us that Jesus Christ existed, established the Christian church, and was executed under Pontius Pilate. He confirms the existence of the growing Christian movement, including in Rome. And finally, he confirms what the New Testament tells us, that early Christians were martyred for their faith in Jesus Christ. And also, a little bit of weirdness that after they killed him, how come the cult kept going? All adding credence to New Testament claims. The next dude on our list is Pliny the Younger. Pliny the Younger was a Roman governor from Bithynia, and he was one of those guys that constantly had to ask his boss for help.
What is the most inspiring thing I ever said to you?
Don't be an idiot. Changed my life.
He was kind of of a big admin nerd. You know, the type of work that won't fart off schedule unless they get written permission from the boss. That was Pliny the Younger. Very intelligent and a great administrator. In one of his letters to Emperor Trajan, he discussed problems he was having with an increasingly large group of Christians. Pliny seems rather indifferent to Christians. Pliny didn't really have strong opinions about anything. He was just someone that liked to follow the letter of the law. He knew it was illegal to be a Christian. Christians should be executed. So how does he handle this increasing number of Christians? So he's writing to Emperor Trajan about ones that he's interrogated, ones that give up on Christianity, and all fun stuff like this. While discussing how to handle these meddlesome Christians, Pliny gives us a fascinating description of the early Christian movement.
They asserted, however, that the sum and substance of their fault or error had been that they were accustomed to meet on a fixed day before dawn, and sing responsively a hymn to Christ as to a god, and to bind themselves by oath, not to some crime, but not to commit fraud, theft, or adultery, not to falsify their trust, nor to refuse to return a trust when called upon to do so.
Pliny actually proposed a really fascinating test to see if people were Christians or not. Pliny would give Christians an emblem of the emperor, ask them to do a little homage to the emperor, and deny Christ. If the person being accused would worship the emperor and deny Christ, they were automatically set free. But if they refused to worship the emblem and stayed true to Christ, they were summarily executed for being a Christian. There are three important details from this quotation. First off, it shows us very, very early Christian tradition that points to Jesus being a divine figure. None of this nonsense that Jesus was a good guy that slowly developed into a god. Very early on in Christianity, we found foundational teaching in the belief that Christians look to Jesus Christ as God. Second, we see further confirmation that Christianity rapidly spread across the Roman Empire as recorded in the New Testament. Third, we also see confirmation that Christians would rather die than deny Christ. Although the account does record that some people did deny their faith, it also shows that many people were willing to be painfully executed rather than deny the truth of Jesus Christ. This would give very strong inclination to the belief in the resurrection. People who were highly convinced that their leader had defeated death would be far more likely to die for the cause. Our next historian today is the Roman historian Suetonius. If you like your history with lots of gossip, sex, intrigue, political assassination, murder, and just all-round bedlam, Suetonius is your man. Suetonius never met a rumor he didn't like. Suetonius would be like if TMZ wrote a history book. He loves getting into all the juicy, gross, interpersonal details of the Roman Empire. His famous book, The 12 Caesars, is a fantastic read for anyone who likes to look intellectual but also likes celebrity gossip. That's me! Suetonius has an interesting statement about something that happened during the reign of Emperor Claudius.
Since the Jews constantly made disturbances at the instigation of Christus, he expelled them from Rome.
This is probably in keeping with what we read in Acts 18:2.
Because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome, Paul went to see them.
Also quite likely to be the same event that was leading to the persecution of Christians that we read about in the book of Hebrews. It seemed that Christians were the problem, but Christians got lumped together with the Jews. This would certainly correlate with the story of Jews becoming Christians and wanting to go back to being Jews because of persecution. We read about this story within the book of Hebrews, confirming the early impact that the teachings of Christ had upon the Christian community, particularly in Rome. Finally, let's look at the earliest reference to the life of Jesus from the Jewish historian Josephus. Josephus was a devout Jewish soldier who fought in the destruction of Jerusalem. Our good friend Josephus gives us a great quote on the life of Christ.
At this time there was a wise man called Jesus, and his conduct was good. He was known to be virtuous. Many people among the Jews and other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die, but those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship. They reported that he had appeared to them 3 days after his crucifixion, and that he was alive. Accordingly, he was perhaps the Messiah, concerning whom the prophets and reported wonders. And the tribe of Christians, so named after him, has not disappeared to this day.
It is worth noting that a far earlier version of the Josephus quote does exist that uses far more praising language of Jesus Christ, almost devotional. Yet this devotional language was probably added by a later Christian scribe copying the text. It is probably this far more neutral language that represents the original thoughts of Josephus. What's particularly interesting about Josephus is that he's a Jewish historian. His primary focus is on the history of Israel, with a particular focus on the first century. Not only does he talk about Jesus, but we also have references to James, the brother of Jesus, John the Baptist, and even Annas the high priest, providing further fascinating corroboration of the New Testament narrative. As a bonus, we'll add one more account, and this one's graffiti, even cooler than this interesting graffiti I just saw in Mongolia. This graffiti is Graffitio Blasphemo, or the blasphemous graffiti. The Graffitio Blasphemo is a bit of Roman graffiti that was found on the Palatine Hill in Rome. It's a fascinating little drawing where a human is being crucified, but they have the head of a mule. Beside the cross, there is what appears to be a Roman soldier worshipping this individual on the cross with the phrase, Alexamenos worships his god. This is actually a particularly interesting image. The Romans used the mule's head as a way to mock the Jewish god. Also, the fact that they are noting that the person who is a Christian, these Alexamenos, is worshipping this individual as a god, kind of bringing together the idea that Jesus was worshipped as the Jewish god. Kind of love that even at the time of Jesus, people were like, scraping weird information about him on bathroom walls. All this to say, we have a wealth of information to corroborate the New Testament narrative. Even from those who were not themselves Christians, they verified the historical reality that Jesus Christ lived, performed miracles, died, and was believed to have rose again, and that his early followers worshipped him as a god. Most of these people despised Christians and would be only too happy to find information that disproved the Christian beliefs. Yet the fact that their testimony confirms the Christian account should give us great confidence in the historical reliability of the gospel accounts of Jesus Christ, moving Jesus firmly from the mythos to the logos. Oh, I love all these historical accounts. Let me know which one was your favorite, because hey, you decide.